Welcome to Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show, and without questions, I do not have a show. Today is the weekend before August 1st. It's a Saturday. I've got a few questions. You all know that August is always a tough month for me because that's the month my son passed away 4 years ago now. It'll be 4 years this year. Can you believe how time flies? And in the spirit of August, I guess, and life itself, 4 years later, we've been through a lot in the last 4 years as a country, as a world. I mean, 4 years ago, when my son was still here, we didn't have COVID. 6 months after my son passed, we had COVID. And then all of a sudden, everybody was feeling sick and tired and scared and grieving over people they were losing, loved ones that were dying. The world was a mess, and it was a mess that way for 2 years. During those 2 years, the music industry changed considerably. All of a sudden, people that would never be found on YouTube were found on YouTube, and YouTube changed considerably. I was set up for YouTube at that point, and YouTube was one of the places where I through my gifts and my talents and kept playing, and a lot of you kept saying hi to me and kept my spirits high and encouraged me to keep playing drum videos, and I made a lot of them during that season. I continue to make a lot of videos. Drumming is one of the ways I work out my grief and my anger and my pain is drumming. One of the things you may all be realizing, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback about this, by the way, but after Italy, we came home from Italy in May, my wife said to me, honey, you probably can go gray and it'd be okay. Now, you got to understand something. I went gray when I was 43 years old. When I was 43 years old, I let my hair go, didn't color it, and my hair was becoming grayer and grayer and whiter and whiter. And then all of a sudden, just before our 25th wedding anniversary, we're married 40 years, by the way. This past March, we're married 40 years. My 25th wedding anniversary, my wife says to me, you look really old, you're starting to act really old, and you know what? You need to color your hair. So I started coloring my hair a long time ago. I actually tried it when I was like 40 years old. But by the time I was 47, I guess, 47 would be probably about 25 years of marriage, I was coloring my hair, and I colored my hair for a long time. And of course, when you color your hair, your beard doesn't look right. So I didn't grow a beard. I had a little mustache. I would keep it trimmed really short. Some of you knew I had one. Some of you didn't know I had one for some reason. Anyhow, came back from Italy, and Steph says, go gray. So the last 2 haircuts have been no coloring. My hair is getting whiter and whiter. It's going to continue to get whiter, but it seems to work for me. I mean, I am 62, going to be 63 this month. So the end of the month, I'll be 63. So I guess it's time to let my hair go gray-white. So that's where I'm at. And that's part of growing older with dignity, growing older and feeling okay about it. And it's taken me a couple months to start talking about this, but that's what's happening. So the last 4 years has been the process to realizing that I am older. I crossed 60 right in the middle of COVID. My 60th birthday was kind of a waste. It was a year after my son was gone. We were right in the middle of COVID, and there was no 60th birthday party for Earl. The world wasn't ready for parties, wasn't ready for... It was still social distancing to the max. It was a strange time. So when I turned 63 at the end of the month, I realized that I am looking at the last season of life. And in looking at the last season of life, I see a lot of things. And one of the things I see is if I don't stay active, I don't stay motivated, I don't have a purpose, if I don't keep doing something forward and thinking forward, you can easily slip into a bad place. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of our family members pass in the last couple of years. Last year was a terrible year for our family from that perspective, family and friends, losing family and friends. And I realized how short life is. So with that in mind, I've gone gray, got a new look. Some of you think I look thinner. That's magic, I guess. Camera's supposed to add 10 pounds, probably does, but you guys have been very kind to me. So I appreciate the kind comments and thoughts. And by the way, I appreciate the community I have. I have a drum community of people that follow my drum videos religiously. Thank you all for commenting and being encouraging all the time. I realize I don't contribute to the wider drum community, the ones that are on Facebook and Instagram. By the way, I just tossed Instagram the last month. I think I'm at 2, maybe 3 weeks without Instagram now. And I can tell you I don't miss it at all. It doesn't produce anything good for me. Looking at Instagram, I could never figure out how to get followers. I've got a lot of videos there. So those of you that follow me on Instagram, sorry. Follow me on Facebook. I guess I have a channel called Drum Talk. I started Drum Talk when I started my drum lesson business, when I started my YouTube channel. I don't do a lot of lessons. I do a few lessons, but Drum Talk is still there. Somehow I have about as many followers on Drum Talk as I do on Instagram. Crazy. Don't post a lot on Drum Talk. Anyhow, all that to say is, social media wise, there's my Earl Bennett Facebook page, which I don't go on a lot. It's mostly for family, to be honest with y'all. Some of you are friends on Facebook too. Thank you. Most of my communication comes through YouTube. Please like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. I guess that's what I'm supposed to say. But that being said, I've now limited myself to just YouTube. So that's where you find me, is on YouTube pretty much. So keep that in mind if you're looking for me. I'm I didn't close down my Instagram page. I'm letting it just stay there and float, but I'm not maintaining right now. So I'm in a non-maintenance mode. If you need me, get me through Facebook or get me on YouTube. That's how you get a hold of me. Anyhow, I don't know why I'm telling you that. Probably only the 200 people that love this show will be the ones that will see that, but thank you all that do love this show. So let's start with the questions this month. And in the questions, I will shout out to the people that basically asked the questions this month. Some of them are very faithful viewers. The first one comes from Greg Oneoff, one of my very faithful viewers. Now, he had a lot to say on this one. I don't even know what video this was on. It was around the 4th of July, and he asked a question. He says, on some of your videos, I see a yellowish set stacked up in the corner. It isn't your concert tom set. I can see lugs on the bottom. What set is this? So the set he's talking about is the one that's over in the corner over here. And it is my small maple Gretsch kit with an 18-inch bass drum, a 6.5 by 10 tom, an 8 by 12 tom, and a 14 by 14 floor tom. And that was the kit I was using in town when I would play churches and other things. For the last year, I haven't been playing churches. That's been a personal decision on my part. There's a lot to that. Reasons why. Don't want to get into it today. So I took the kit out of its cases where it had been stacked up in cases, and I pulled it out and just stuck it in the room. And I have played it once or twice. I did a video, one of my Steely Dan covers a couple months back that Rick Marotta played. It was off Royal Scam. There was only 2 tracks that Rick Marotta played on Royal Scam, and it was one of those. I think it was Don't Eat Me Alive or something like that. Something Alive. Not really good with names, as you can tell. I'm good with naming celebrity drummers like Rick Marotta, but I can't remember the name of the song for Dirt. But I've done so many Steely Dan songs, as you know. That was one I did on that kit with those toms. I mean, I didn't pull the bass drum out. I've been thinking about pulling the bass drum out with this kit, to be honest. I've been thinking about doing a double bass kit with a 18-inch bass drum and the 22, kind of a la Ed Shaughnessy kind of thing. But I haven't done that yet. But maybe one day I'll just rip everything apart, stick 2 bass drums in here just for fun, see what happens. That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? As you can see, the concert tom kit is growing. It didn't grow with a 6-inch tom, though, unfortunately. I'm still looking for that magical 5.5 by 6-inch concert tom. Can't seem to find it. I even hit up Jenkins and Martins and said, hey, can you make me a tom? And they didn't want to touch it. We don't do pearl. We're not making pearl. We're not making you a tom. Nice knowing you. So much for those guys. Anyhow, there's something special about pearl fiberglass toms. They're different than Blamire. They're not as thick. They're thinner. I really do love these drums, and the more I get them, the more I love them. So I have a new addition to it. It is a 16 by 18 fiberglass floor tom that I found on eBay last week. It was blue. There's actually a 10 by 14 and a 24-inch bass drum on eBay that's that same blue. I love the blue color, by the way. But my concert toms are not blue. They are natural fiberglass right now. There's always that part of me that says, I'm going to paint them one day, but I never do. So I made this natural one too. I took the wrap off. Wrap comes off rather easily. Sucker's huge. It is huge. Really digging it. Used it on a couple covers this weekend, three covers this weekend. And right now I've got 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18. So I've got a 13 over there somewhere that I have to pull into the kit, but I haven't done it yet. So if I do pull that together, it'll be 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, which is kind of cool. I still want the 6, so I'm looking for a 6. So that's what the kit is, Greg. It's a little Gretsch kit. Now, it's an oddball kit, meaning it's all pieced together, just like this kit is too. This is all pieced together. None of this came together. I didn't buy these toms together. I bought 4 of them came together. The 16, 15, 14, 13, and one of my 10s came together. I have 3 10s, by the way. But the 8.5 by 10 and the 8 by 12 I bought separately. The 8 by 10 and the 5.5 by 8 and the 6.5 by 10, I bought these, the 2 on the stand. I bought them together. So this kit's kind of been put together. You know, it's a put together kit. And that's what I did with this little Gretsch kit. My friend Scott Hazing gave it to me. Originally, it had a Slingerland floor tom. I sold the Slingerland floor tom and bought a Gretsch Catalina Maple floor tom that had no rims on it. It had all the lugs, had no legs, and no rims. I bought legs, bought rims, die-cast pearl rims, by the way, so they're die-cast hoops on it. And I fixed the drum up for it cost me like $150 to fix it up. Sounds fine with my other 2 Gretsch toms. The 12 is a round badge 12. The 6.5 by 10 is a concert tom converted with bearing edges done by Resurrection Drums in Hollywood, Florida. And I put die-cast hoops on that one too. And the 18-inch bass drum is a 1980 square badge 14 by 18 bass drum. So it's all pieced together. But that's my kits. I like to piece things together. The only kit that I bought brand new that I own is my 1979 Gretsch Walnut kit. So everything else is stuff I've thrown together. So, all right, Greg, thanks for the question. I know you got another one later down the road. We'll bring you back. Next question comes from my friend 11 Drums, Toby. Toby said, amazing cover. He said, why do you mount your china that way? I think it was Blue Collar Man was the cover. I did a couple Styx tunes last month. 3 of them, actually. Why do you mount your china that way? I just know in metal, all the mounting is the other way around. So, what Toby's asking about is the difference between taking a china and playing it upside down. That's what this one is. This is a 16-inch Paiste thin signature china, which I've had. This is my old favorite. See how good it looks? It's all dented up and stuff. Upside down versus my 2002 18-inch china, which I play right side up usually. So the question is, why? Well, truthfully, China cymbals, when they first were created, were cymbals that you would ride on. And most guys played them this way, right side up, so they could do ride patterns on them. Give it that kind of dark, that dark ride sound. And I actually have a cymbal I've been using on a bunch of my swing videos I've been doing, which is a 22-inch A-Zildjian swish cymbal, swish knocker cymbal. It's got 20 rivets in it. And that's kind of the way you play those cymbals. Now, the guy that I saw that made it upside down famous and something everybody wanted to do was Billy Cobham. Billy Cobham was playing this huge Fibes kit. He had a huge clear Fibes kit, and he took his 22-inch swish and he flipped it on its side and started playing it upside down. And then everybody started playing them upside down. And for the longest time, I played this one upside down. When my friend Steve Dupree gave me this cymbal, I gave him a Zildjian Crash, by the way, but that's beside the point. He gave it to me anyhow. I just said, hey, I want you to have this. So I gave him the Zildjian. But when he gave it to me, it was perfect. After playing on it for the last 5-7 years, it's actually starting to get that dent along the ridge. At least it's not cracked. This one's cracked. I cracked this one. But I've been playing it right side up mostly because it sounds better. I don't like the back side of it as much as... There's something about hitting it on this little bridge here. It's got a harsher sound, so this is less harsh. I play it more like Charlie Watts played his China cymbals, right side up. And it just has more of a China crash sound than a China smash dash sound. So it's a sound choice. And if you know anything about the way I drum, that's what you know I do. I pick sounds of cymbals based on what I'm hearing. And this is how I hear this cymbal. And I don't hear it as that bashy upside down thing very often. I've had it in the upside down a few times, but you just don't see it very often that way with me. I kind of like it best this way. So it's a preference. Now I have other China cymbals. I have Wuhan's. I've got a Tosco by Sabian, 18-inch. It's a beautiful cymbal. I always play it upside down pretty much. And then I've got a couple that I like to ride on. I've got an old 20-inch Wuhan. I've got that 22 swish knocker. Those are always played right side up with the upturned edges and some rivets in it. So this I do play it upside, the other side now occasionally too. But this one's kind of dead, to be honest. It's got a crack in it. It's got a beautiful, beautiful crack right around this ridge, by the way. So my thing with China cymbals is you want to have a big, fat lip. The fatter the lip to where it bends off, that's the better they are. If they've got the short lip, like some of the old Zildjian, some of the Zildjian swishes have the lip very close to the edge, like they turned it up. They don't sound as good to me as the ones with the big fat lip. So that's one of the things I look for. Anyhow, hope that helps, Toby. Thanks for the question. Great question, by the way. All right, my next question comes from a guy named Wayne. What's Wayne Caponeus, his name? And his question is, he actually wrote this via email. He said, I watched your church drumming videos, which are awesome, and your drum covers. Your facility around the kit is so smooth. What kinds of things do you practice to get facility around the drums for your hands? So the truth of the matter is, and I've had a couple comments, I just did a video, I did a cover on, not this kit, but it was like this kit because it had the floor tom in it. I did a cover of Tin Man by America, and I had some comments about my right hand, So I was doing the bossa pattern, So I was doing the bossa samba pattern. And I think it was my friend Matthew Jackson, CCM drummer, and he said something about how smooth my right hand is. How do I practice that? Well, you practice that by practicing the way you practice everything else. You know, it's your singles. And you start to develop your fingers and your grip and your rolls. And I practiced all the things everybody else practiced. That's an exercise out of Gadaments. Steve Gadd's rudimentary book. So I'm not real clean with it, but I'm working on it. I keep working on it. And it's a warm-up exercise, actually. It's one of Steve's warm-up exercises. He's got 1,000 exercises in there. But if you work on the traditional paradiddles, double strokes, your single strokes, if you're working on those patterns all the time, you're working with a metronome, you're working them up, you're working your wrists, and then you're playing, guess what starts to happen? You start to develop the chops. I really don't have chops, per se. And I say this all the time, by the way, so many of you heard me say that many times. You say, well, nah, sometimes you do. What happens when you play music is you hear something and then you go for something and then your hands do something that amazes you and you go, wow, I actually pulled that off. Like playing a 30-second note roll around these toms, you know, around the kit. I did one of those in one of the songs I did recently, and I just looked at myself and I said, wow, that came out of nowhere. Sometimes I try to do that and it just sounds like garbage. So how do you work on this stuff? You play a lot. So playing a lot of music. When I practice, I do practice hand exercises, but I play more than I practice. I have to be honest. I spend more time on the kit grooving than I do. I don't spend a lot of time doing exercises. But I've worked on the rudiments. I'll pick out one of the rudiments and I'll do flam taps or pad is not staying where it's supposed to stay. This is one of those Gladstone pads, you know. Radimicues. Radimicues are very useful. Radimicues are extremely useful little lick. Drags, very useful. I use drags all the time, by the way. So, practicing the rudiments. See if I can mute it down a little bit so I'm not killing myself when I try to edit this later. That little is a drag. So when you practice that's just your drags. I'm not a marching drummer, but knowing how to play a drag is important. I use that little dippy thing all the time, you know. So the rudiments are part of what I practice. I practice rudiments. I use rudiments for around the kit. 5-stroke roll. And then sometimes I was trying to like work on something where I mutate something. Like that's like, not even sure what that sticking pattern is. It's kind of like a paradiddle diddle, I think. paradiddle diddles, paradiddles. You practice on the pad, the paradiddle, then you break it up on the kit. You mess around with it a little bit. So I spend more time, you know, I will sit on a pad once in a while. I have a pad near my desk, I'll be honest. Every once in a while I'll pick up a pair of sticks and just play a couple minutes of just paradiddles and singles and doubles. By the way, I don't know if some of you guys are picking up on this. I had a question. I can't even remember who asked it. It was on Ask Earl Anything months ago. And they asked me and they said, why do you play with the back end of your stick? And I will tell you that for 40-something years of my life, pretty much, I've been playing with the back end of my stick on the snare drum. Now, the guy asked me the question, and then he asked me, how do you play rolls when you do that? And he was right. My rolls really kind of stink. When you play this way, not as easy as when you play this way with the tip. So after I did the Ask Earl Anything and I answered the question that this is just how I play, I started goofing around with the stick the other way. And I started realizing something, that I could play it with the other way if I wanted to. It felt a little weird, but I started making myself do it. And if you notice in my videos, I still will flip the stick over, but every once in a while, you'll see me playing this way. And why am I playing this way? Well, the way you hit a snare drum to get a sound out of it, I used to always think you had to kill the snare drum. That came from a recording session in Nashville I did once. The first record I played on, the engineer said to me, hit that thing like a red-headed stepchild. That's what he said to me. Now, that's a very offensive thing to say to someone, by the way, who has a stepchild. But what he was basically saying was, beat that sucker into the ground. And I wasn't hitting hard enough. I wasn't hitting hard enough. So it became my thing to always hit aggressively, always hit rim shots. Well, you know what? Rim shots don't really sound that good on recordings. And that was something that Blair Cinta was talking about one day on his podcast. Blair Cinta has a podcast. He's a session drummer from LA. He was talking about playing dead in the middle of the snare drum with the stick was the best sound versus the off the rim. So, two things I've been working on. Playing the middle of the snare drum. And the other thing I've been working on is playing with my tip of the stick the right way, which gives me a little bit more facility, believe it or not. So, that's a freebie. That wasn't a question. I just decided to throw that in because I thought it was kind of interesting. Because really, when we talk about cymbals and why I play something upside down versus right side up, what I'm really talking about is how do I get sounds out of my drums? That's what I'm talking about. It's about making music. So when I talk about how do I practice the drums, rudiments, because rudiments are used in what I do. But then I also practice music because that's what I really want to do is play music with it. So it's practicing grooves, it's practicing rudiments, and then it's applying those things to the drum kit to get the most out of it. Hope that helped, Wayne. Hope you enjoyed that question, that answer to that question. I also said, it's playing 48 years of your life and not stopping that helps you to have chops at this age. I'll tell you that right now. The little bit of chops I do have. All right. Next question comes from a guy named Tom Kelsey 2303. And I don't think he'll ever watch this because I don't think he meant this in a nice way for some reason, but I could be wrong. So if you do watch it, Tom, thanks for watching. But if you don't watch it, okay, because I thought the question was kind of framed in a snarky kind of way, because I understood what he was saying. He said this in the question. He says, why even bother with RIMS mounts on the concert tom set? There's no reason to try to get even more resonance. Laugh out loud. Now, maybe he was laughing at me, so maybe it wasn't a snarky. But it did strike me because he's right. This suspension mount system, called the RIMS mounting system, was created solely to get more resonance out of the drum. And on my Gretsch kit, I try to keep my drums a little more wide open than this kit, which has got some moon gel on it and some gels on it that you don't see half the time because they're clear. I bought the right... I made my gels, by the way. I got gels that are clear, so they're less obtrusive and you guys less questions about why do you mute the drums so much? Well, these drums require you to mute them, by the way. Even though they're a little more open because they're ambassadors, I still put some muting on them. But they're not resonant. Double-headed toms resonate. They got two heads on them, so they resonate differently. And that's where I learned about RIMS mounts, really why you use RIMS mounts, was in his recording studio. That same Nashville studio, I played on my first set of Pearl Fiberglass drums that day, except they were double-headed drums, and they had RIMS mounts on them. And they would sing. They go boom. And that's why I bought RIMS mounts for my Gretsch kit. But why did I put RIMS mounts on this kit? It had nothing to do with resonance, by the way. It had to do with drilling holes in the drums. See, these drums have holes in them automatically because they were all mounted with this mounting bracket. This is a Pearl standard concert tom mounting bracket. Now, here's the thing about concert tom mounting brackets. They go this way, and they go together. So you put two drums together on one stand, and that's all you can do with them. So you have two here, two here, two here, two here, and they're all together, but you can't make them angle the right way. So your setup is really kind of tough to play, if you ask me. I never liked playing it that way. Now, when I was a kid, my first Ludwig kit had an 8 and a 10 concert tom, and a 12, 13, 16 floor tom. And concert toms were on a stand, so I got very used to playing the 8 and the 10 right in this position. This is a very common position for me. So I'm okay with this. But when it comes to these, I want a little tilt here, a little tilt down, a little tilt here. And when it came to these over here, just straight up, it was too much reach. And if you look at my concert toms, the way I have them set up, I actually have all kinds of strange angles here. And the 16 is actually almost flat. The 15's tilted down. The 14's tilted down. 12's down. And then you got the 8 and the 10 here. So I put the RIMS mounts on for mounting my drums and not putting holes in my drums. And by the way, these have some extra holes in them, some of them. The 13 and the 14 were drilled for Ludwig mounts. I don't think I did anything to the 16 or the 15. Nope, didn't do anything to the 16 or 15. So it's only my 13, 14 that got a couple extra holes in them. And I tried to keep them to a minimum. So that's really what I was doing, was trying to make sure that I can mount my drums a certain way. Nothing to do with resonance. So it is a laugh out loud. And you know, want to know where I really learned this lesson? Was my 14 by 14 Gretsch floor tom. See, I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, but back in the early 80s, there was a drummer named Steve Gadd who changed the way we look at drum kits. And all the drum kits when I was in the 70s that you'd find in a music store were 12, 13, 16. 8 by 12, 9 by 13, 16 by 16. Steve Gadd came along and said, I want my 10-inch tom to have two heads on it. And he bought a set of Pearl Fiberglass concert toms, as the story goes, and he put two heads on the 10-inch tom, and two heads on the 12-inch tom, and the 13, and the 14, and the 15, and the 16. And then he started using in the studio with a Gretsch 22-inch bass drum, 6.5 by 10, 8 by 12, 9 by 13, 10 by 14 on a stand. And that's what he did. And he changed the way we looked at drum kits. So by the early 80s, everybody was getting 10, 12, 13, 14 on a stand. Well, I had a 14 by 14 floor tom, I had a 16 by 16. And I thought to myself, well, you know what I want to do? I want to put that 14 by 14 on a stand. I'd already got it on floor tom legs, but let's put it on a stand. So I went to Manny's Music in New York, and I was talking to a guy at Manny's Music. You know what he said to me? He said, you should buy a RIMS mount and a pearl tom thing, and that way you can put your floor tom on a RIMS mount, and you won't have to drill any holes. And you know what I did? I said, well, how much is the RIMS mount? $40. How much is the tom mount? $7. All right, I'll buy the $7 tom mount. And that's what I did. And I drilled a hole on that 14x14 floor tom. To this day, I'm trying to hide it all the time. You probably see a piece of tape on my 14x14. You go, what the heck's that piece of tape doing? It's covering a hole, a big hole, because the pearl tom mounting system, 7/8, went right through the shell. Now, why do I have 7/8 tom mounts, pearl tom mounts on my Gretsch kit? Because Gretsch made the worst mounting hardware in the 70s of anybody. And the drum shop in New York where I bought the drums put everybody else's hardware on those drums. In the early 70s, it was Rogers hardware. In the middle 70s, it was Slingerland hardware. In the middle 70s, the middle of it, they also put in Ludwig hardware on it with that terrible L-arm, that Ludwig L-arm, which is terrible, by the way. I have that mount for one of those here right now. And then in 1979, when I bought mine, Pearl came out with the 7/8 hardware, and they said, we're putting 7/8 tom mounts on everything. And they put pearl tom mounts on that kit. So my 8, my 10, my 12, my 13 all have pearl 7/8 holes in the shells. I didn't have RIMS mounts at that point. They weren't selling RIMS mounts. Now, they were to studio guys, but they weren't commonly known, and most guys didn't have RIMS mounts in 1979. The first ads for RIMS mounts started showing up in Modern Drummer in 1979. The only guys that had them were Jeff Porcaro and Russ Kunkel and Jim Keltner, the guys in LA. So nobody was playing RIMS mounts at that point in time. Anyhow, long and the short of it, after I drilled that hole in that 14x14, I realized another purpose for RIMS mounts. It's to mount drums a different way and to not drill extra holes. So, needless to say, I felt really bad about my 14x14 floor tom, which, by the way, one day I would buy a RIMS mount for. I actually have a RIMS mount for an 8-lug 14x14 floor tom, and I've got one for the 16x16 floor tom, which is on this 16x14 concert tom right now. So I used to mount those floor toms on a stand. Actually, I was a drum tech one night for the Rippingtons. Tony Morales was the drummer at the time, and Tony Morales was playing at a place called the Club Bennett in 1995. And I took my son and my good friend Rich Sullivan and his son and a couple other friends from the church I was at to go see the Rippingtons in concert. And Tony Morales, my wife interviewed for Modern Drummer magazine in 1995. I said to him, if you ever come back, I'll use my kit. So he called me up, and I brought my Gretsch kit down, and he played on my Gretsch kit. And that night, I had the floor tom mounted on a RIMS mount, and I believe I had the 14 and the 16 on RIMS mounts on a stand, like Gad, with the 10-12. So I'll see if I can dig up a picture of that. I have a picture somewhere. Anyhow, all that to say is the RIMS mounts has nothing to do with resonance on these toms. You're correct. It is a laugh out loud. Thanks for bringing that up, Tom. I thought it was a great question, too. Thank you for bringing that to us. All right, the next question. This comes from a person called at the Michigan School of Apologetics, and this was on the cover Fire and Rain, James Taylor, Russ Kunkel. He goes, "What kind of brushes are those?" Well, for that particular cover, I actually used Blastics. Now I have two different types of Blastics. I have a set of Blastics that have a wood handle and the plastic, and then I have a set that's the black handle, which is just plastic. Now, I couldn't find the other one of these, by the way. It's somewhere in one of my bags someplace. And I actually have an oddball. And one of the things I've used for the last couple of years is 1-in-1. And I think on the James Taylor cover, I was doing this for some reason. So, the thing with Blastics, really the thing with Blastics you want to know is the more ratty they are, the older they are. At least this pair has got to be 1985, ish. Yeah, I bought this in the 80s. So this pair probably is a good 25, 30 years old probably. The rattier they are, the better they sound. Anyhow, I know that Russ Kunkel played with wire brushes on that song, but when I cut it, I used Blastics. That was 2000, I believe. I did that cover. Really fun song. James Taylor, Fire and Rain, classic brush song. So you can do it with real brushes, but I use Blastics. And by the way, Russ Kunkel, the last bunch of years I've seen him play that song with James Taylor, because he has done that gig a few times. He always pulls out Blastics. Now, I don't think Blastics are around anymore. I think Regal Tip went out of business. So now you got to get the Vader version of these or the Vic Firth version, which I don't like as much as my old Blastics, and that's why I have 3 pairs of these. I got a pair of these, and I got an oddball, and then I got this one. So I got 2.5 pairs of them. I got a bunch of brushes. I love brushes. So anyhow, that's what I use. Blastics by Regal Tip, if you can find them somewhere. All right. Next question comes from Dr. Detroit, Jeff. Jeff from Detroit, I guess. And the doctor is one of the guys that follows me all the time. Here's a question for Ask Earl Anything. He said, how do you decide and how long does it take to set up for a song? How do you know which drums and cymbal combos to select? Thank you. All right, Jeff, or Doctor, as I like to call you, the Doctor. To be honest, I don't really spend a lot of time setting stuff up. Usually one of these kits is set up to a certain place. And every once in a while I'll say, let's change the setup. And I change it for myself, and then I start picking songs that match the setup, believe it or not. This kit's almost always set up in here. Occasionally it goes in the other room. And the other kit's almost always set up in the other room. Occasionally it comes in here. So it's when I get a hankering to change things on the weekend that I change the kit around a lot. And then what happens is I start picking music to play on the kit. I hope that makes sense. It's almost like, yeah, I want to play the big concert tom kits. I'm going to add some more toms over here. And I say, what songs can I play that match that? Oh, Steely Dan will work with this one. Oh, the Carpenters work with this one. Many of my early concert tom songs were Carpenters tunes because Hal Blaine played on them. And Hal had a certain way he hit the drums, and he used concert toms. So it was kind of my thing to kind of like, I'm doing a Hal Blaine song, I'm going to use a big concert tom kit. Not always, but a lot. Also, I will say this, the sound of the drums, the concert toms, kind of fits any kind of 70s music and some early 80s music. When we start getting into the late 80s, you start looking at double-headed power toms, which might end up, if it might be a big kit, so if it's a huge kit, I might do it on the concert tom kit. But if it's not a huge kit thing, it's just like a 3-piece kit, I'm probably playing on the Gretsch kit. So, but yeah, that's kind of what drives it. Now, cymbals is a whole different thing. It's whatever cymbals I want to play, what I hear, where I hear a cymbal. Sometimes I get stuck in a rut where I just hear the same cymbals in the same places. I really like the sound of this ride cymbal with this kit, but every once in a while the big beat shows up here. Really, every once in a while the Zildjians come out, but not as often as you might like. Now, I have been doing a bunch of videos with the Zildjians on the Gretsch kit, the little Gretsch kit, and that's gone down in size. I've actually been playing with an 8x10 14x14 or an 8x12 14x14, and I've been doing a lot of jazz standards, and that's the Zildjians kind of work for that, so I've been playing the Zildjians. So that setup is mostly, once I got the small kit, I pick songs that play on the small kit, and then I think, what cymbals do I want to play? Oh, On this one, I want a sizzly cymbal. Maybe I'll put the Armand 19-inch Beautiful Baby Ride. This one, I might put the Swish Knocker on. I choose the cymbals more. The cymbals are more easy to change too, by the way, and as is the snare drum. Snare drum choice today, I gotta be honest, whenever I go for like a real 70s vibe snare drum, it's the 5-inch Black Beauty. Whenever I'm playing something that's more of a rocker, a hard rocker one, I will probably pull out the 6.5 Black Beauty or the 6.5 by 14 cast aluminum DMR snare drum. If I'm going for a real fat ballad sound, a lot of times I'll pull out my walnut, 7 by 14 walnut, or the Black Beauty, 6.5 by 14, or the DMR, or the 8 by 14 Black Magic I have. See, with snare drums, it ends up being, again, what do I really want for the song? What do I really need for the song? The funny thing is, I've been really digging my 5-inch drums. So I've been going to the Noble Cooley and the Black Beauty all the time, cycling in the Acrylite for months now. It just seems like the 5-inch drum is what I've been digging. But I've got a couple really beautiful 6.5 by 14s. I got a Gretsch walnut finish maple poplar drum, 6-ply that sounds great. I've got the 6.5 by 14, cast aluminum DMR, 6.5 by 14 Black Beauty, 7 by 14 DMR solid walnut snare drum. Those are 4 big fat snare drums. Then you throw in the 8-inch Black Magic, and I've got five big fat snare drums. Then I've got the Acrylite, the Black Beauty, and the Noble Cooley for that 5-inch sound. I've got a piccolo if I need one. I've got 2 13-inch drums. I've got an Omar Hakim 5 by 13. I got 6.5 by 14, 6.5 by 13 Steve Jordan snare drum. So I've got more drums to choose from. And then I got a couple fiberglass drums from a guy that left them in my studio. One's a 5 by 13, one's a 6.5 by 14. I am going to give that to my grandson one day. I'm just going to hand it to him and say, here, take that home. Because I got too many drums hanging around. Drums I don't use. You know what I mean? And I probably missed something in that rack because I'm sure there's something in there. Oh, there's a Gretsch 5 by 14 too that I rarely use. That's brass. So I got a lot of drums. So snare drums come in and out. Cymbals change. But as far as the basic kit, when I set up a kit a certain way, then I start picking songs to play on that kit. That's usually what I do. So if I've got the Gretsch kit dialed in as a 4-piece, and I've got this dialed in as a 7-piece kit, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18. This is dialed in to play some big rock numbers. This is dialed in to play concert Tom favorites. Yacht rock. I can play yacht rock on this kit. Just about any yacht rock tune. I can play Styx, progressive rock on this tune. The concert toms work. When it comes to having something that's more resonant, big drums, I'll put more drums on the Gretsch kit, make it bigger. So it really, I set the kit up and then I choose the song is what ends up happening, Doctor. So hope that helps. Now, there's one additional question that came from that question. It's my last question. My friend Greg Oneoff jumped in on your question and he wanted to ask, I really like Doc's question. I'm wondering if something like that, when you try to tap on cymbals in certain places, because sometimes I hit one and it sounds like the same note as the song or the key of the piano. How do you guys know which cymbals to individually tap without listening and trying each one note for note? Hope this makes sense. Anyway, and then he goes on about the song. So he's asking me, how do I know what cymbals to hit? Because it seems like I make sense with it. Well, to be honest, I know my cymbals. That's first part. Second part is it has nothing to do with the key of the song or the notes. Cymbals are complex, meaning there's multiple overtones in a cymbal. Now, the only cymbal that has one note, it's very bell-like, is UFIPs. And I don't have any UFIPs. They are beautiful cymbals, though, UFIPs. But I don't care if it's a Paiste, I don't care if it's a Zildjian, a Sabian, a Mino, an Istanbul, or any one of the other Turkish cymbals that come out. They all have very complex sounds. So if you've got nasty sounding cymbals that don't match anything, it's probably because your cymbals are not well-made cymbals. Cheaper cymbals don't tend to not have that nice factor. When it comes to pro-line cymbals, then it comes down to what you're hearing for the song. Now, sometimes this ride is too much, so I pull a different ride in. Sometimes a China is too much, so I pull a different sound in. You know, I pull another crash. I remember I was doing Only Yesterday by the Carpenters, Revisit. I had this 18-inch China right over here. Kept smacking it. I said, nah, I got to get rid of that China. It's not the sound I want. I put an 18-inch giant beat crash, and it worked. So knowing where to put things on the kit that you're going to go to is another aspect of it. But my brain is going, when I'm listening to music, I'm not really dialing in, like trying to hit it that way. I'm thinking more about what I'm trying to say. And in trying to say something, is it a bell? Is it a ride cymbal? Is it a hi-hat? Is it a bark? Is it a snare hit? Is it a rim shot? You know, is it a tom fill? Is it a mix of a tom fill and a snare fill and a kick drum fill? All those things are choices that come in the moment of listening to the music, and they're musical choices. Sometimes the song dictates what I play, and sometimes I play stuff that sounds right in the song. And that's pretty much the magic of Earl, is that Earl's listening to music. So to go back to the question about how do I practice and everything else, a lot of my practice is listening to music. And I would say listening to music, as well as playing the music, as well as doing the rudiments and stuff, are all part of the development of my ear to play music in a musical environment. So when I get with musicians and I'm playing in a room, I come up with parts, I hear things. By the way, I've been working on a new project with a friend of mine. His name is Tommy Ski. He's written some songs. We've been down here recording. We've recorded 3 tracks. It's going to be an album we're working on of his stuff, of his music. We're taking our time on it. I've been having a blast with it. I mean, I played a couple times on the other kit. I played one time on this kit. A lot of fun. I'm having fun. And it's like challenging because it's my parts. I'm coming up with my own parts. And where do my parts influenced by? It's by all the music I listen to. So listen to lots of music, play lots of drums, practice on a pad your rudiments, the things you need to know. And the more you play, the better you'll get. That's what I've learned. And I guess that's why my playing is not great, but my playing is where it's at today because I play so much. And if I didn't play as much as I did, then I wouldn't be at the same place. So, anyhow, that's all I've got for Ask Earl Anything. I covered all the questions. Thank you all for watching. Your questions make the show. Without questions, I don't have a show. I hope it wasn't too boring. I probably should break these things up into shorter little segments, but that's too much work. And I don't know if I get the value out of it. I think you guys enjoy it this way. So tell me, do you think I should make the show shorter? Should I make the show shorter and cut it up like over the month, like have like 2 questions, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes here? Or should I keep doing the big long format? That's the question. For those of you who make it to the end, acknowledge the question. And I'd like to tell you I'm going to give you something, but I don't know what I'd give you. I don't know. Maybe I will give something. I'm not promising, though. Anyhow, thanks for watching Ask Earl Anything. Questions make the show. Have a great week and a great month. I'll be back in September. I was going to say January. I'll be back in September. Bye, everybody.